My first guest today is Dr. Trish Scanlan from Ireland. Dr. Trish runs the Pediatric Oncology Department at Muhimbili Hospital. Since her involvement in 2008, along with her dedicated team of Tanzanian doctors and nurses, the short-term survival rates of children with cancer rocketed from 12 to 60%. Such is the amazing impact Dr. Trish and her team have made. Thank you, Dr. Trish, for taking this time to be with us here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Can you please tell us something about yourself, something that the viewers would be interested in knowing?
Sure. I'm a 41-year-old Irish person. I'm from the countryside in Ireland. I have just recently recovered from breast cancer for the second time. I am generally a happy person, and I've been involved in Tanzania for just over 7 years.
Okay. It's very interesting to know. Can you give us a brief background on what you do?
Yep. I'm a children's cancer specialist. I trained in Ireland, and I then came, when I completed my training, to set up within the body of the government hospital system here in Tanzania, a pediatric oncology program. It was in its infancy before I got here, but we established it and have expanded it to provide a service for all children who come through the doors free of charge.
Okay, wow. So what brought you to Tanzania? You know, what made you leave the comfort of your home and you know, just get up and come and move here?
Well, when people ask me that, I usually joke and say Google, because I was doing a master's program in 2005, 2006, and I needed to do my thesis, and I wanted to do it on pediatric oncology, but in a limited resource setting. So I Googled. And I found an organization that had a link with the Ocean Road Cancer Institute. And so I came, and I was here for 2 months at that point. And while I was really studying what was going on, I did a needs assessment for the ward at the time, as it was. And I also looked at the figures for 2005. And there were 2 reasons that made me come back after I'd finished that work. And one was that really the survival was very poor outside of one condition, which is called Burkitt's lymphoma, which was treated very well. But everything else, really a lot of improvement could be made. And knowing that children's cancer is curable, I really felt that there was something that could be done. And secondly, the people that I found on the ward, both the staff and the parents, were entirely and completely committed to the children. They, you know, there was no hostility of a foreigner coming in and trying to change things. They were so welcoming and so kind, and it was so lovely to work with them that it really was a pleasure. So although I love working in Ireland, I love the hospital that I trained, you know, for me, I felt coming back here, there was more need. You know, if I didn't show up to work here, then things may not happen. Whereas if I don't show up to work in Ireland, then perhaps somebody else will just do my job.
Yes. Okay. So tell us a little bit about your own personal path of empowerment. What was significant?
Well, I guess I would have to say I didn't really have a path to empowerment because I was born empowered. You know, I was one of the lucky ones. I came from a family where things had already changed in my society. In Ireland, you know, when my mother was married, she had to give up her job. She had a government job, and the rule at that time was women who were married couldn't be employed by the government. So it's not that long ago that things were not great in Ireland in terms of empowerment for women. But that changed, you know. In my lifetime, and certainly in my memory, there was never a point where I felt I was lesser or I had to struggle harder.
Right.
I felt entitled to everything that my brothers felt entitled to.
Yes.
You know, I didn't even have to think about it.
Right. But coming here, do you think that there were any challenges you faced? You know, you came from, like you said, you came from a society where you were already born empowered. And then coming here, you know, maybe were things any different? Did you face any challenges in that respect?
I would have to say, me personally,
yeah,
because I think empowerment is also about belief.
Right.
So if you believe that you're equal to other people, then you don't really feel, you know, you don't feel the struggle, even if it's there.
Yes.
So I would have to say, coming to Tanzania and working with the Tanzanian people, I myself did not feel that I struggled as a woman, particularly as a woman. And I could certainly see that the educated in Tanzania, I think they have a similar experience as I do. You know, if you look at Muhimbili Hospital, all the big posts are women, every one of them. Every one of them, from the director of the hospital to the director of all the departments, are all women.
Right.
So where I would see it would be in the poor and the uneducated.
Right.
I would see it on the ward where the mamas don't feel they have the power to speak when their child is particularly unwell.
Yeah.
Or I would see it on the ward where we say the child needs to have a surgery. For example, they need their eye removed or they need a kidney operation. And the mamas couldn't give the permission because they have to get permission from the father.
Yeah.
Or they wouldn't be able to bring the child home, and they would, you know, they would be in trouble when they got home if they made that decision without discussing it. So I would see it in small ways, you know, in the families that I look after.
Yeah.
But I get an impression that there's a two-tier system in Tanzania, that the women who are educated and from the middle and the wealthy classes, they feel empowered. I feel. I mean, they'd have to talk for themselves.
Right.
And it's really, the work has to be done to bring the mamas from the poor and the girls from the poorer classes, to get them to feel equal to their boys and their men.
Definitely. So what are some of the challenges besides, you know, you said you already feel so empowered and that it's a belief, you know, that if you walk in and you have that attitude where, you know, you don't feel less of yourself, still, are there any challenges you face, you know, as a woman working here? And what are some ways that you have overcome these challenges?
I genuinely don't feel too many challenges as a woman. I think there are a lot of challenges working here.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's a limited resource setting, and so you really do have to fight on behalf of my little patients, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't, honestly haven't felt that I have been unwelcome at a meeting, or you know, my voice has not been heard because I'm not a woman. Perhaps my voice has not been heard for other reasons, but I haven't felt it as a woman, I would have to say. But again, that could be my own belief. But again, I say I have felt it, you know, in terms of the patients that I look after and their families. I do see them as hugely without power.
Right.
And I do feel that that's where I struggle. I struggle to make them understand that they do have rights.
Right.
That, you know, if they come to hospital, it is their right to be seen by a doctor. It is their right for the nurse to make sure the medicines are given correctly.
Right.
And those are things that we try our very best to teach the families when they come to us.
Right. So one of the biggest struggles is maybe trying to empower these women, right?
Yes, I think that's true.
And give them give them a voice.
I think that's true.
And to speak up. Okay. So I've seen you, and I spoke to you before, and it was, you know, you're so busy doing so many things. How do you create a balance in your life? You know, because you're working, you know, you're traveling. So how do you create a balance and, you know, have a sense of?
Well, I guess I had to. I'm a little bit of a hypocrite because I didn't have a balance, and then I got sick, and so that made me think and rethink the way I lived my life, you know, and I have now developed more of a balance. You know, I think the thing is, happiness is the key. And if you are unhappy, or if you are stressed, or if you're not spending enough time with your family or with your friends, and you know, in the line of work that I have been involved in, it can be all consuming, because everything you do is another step towards another child surviving. So you can certainly get caught up in it. But I would say you won't live forever if you do that. And you really have to take some time. And it's about just finding what makes you happy, whether it's talking on the phone to your family and friends, or whether it's, you know, going out or staying in, but you have to find something, your quiet time and your happiness, where you switch off and you're not thinking of work.
Right, definitely. And also, you know, I noticed that whenever when I spoke to you before and I asked you, you know, that what keeps you going, you said that at the end of the day, it's all for the children. You have to always think about the children, you know, and that's what keeps you going and gives you the fuel. And is that something that, you know, you would maybe tell other people, that they have to sort of find a purpose that is larger than their own?
Absolutely. I mean, every time you have a challenge, and there have been many challenges, as you can imagine, in setting up an entire service, which is what we have done in the last few years. And there have been many, many challenges to that. And you can get frustrated, you can get exhausted, you can get fed up. But at the end of the day, you have to say to yourself, how does this affect the children? And that's my focus. I mean, obviously, you know, it totally depends on what your line of work is or what your interest is, but you have to think, forget the small details, forget that person who spoke crossly to you, or forget, you know, that meeting that got cancelled, and just think, right, how do I make this right? How do I make it work so that, you know, the goal is beyond you, and you're like, how do I get there? And if you lose your temper, or if you're, you know, too tired, you can't get there because you can't see it. But if you have a simple mantra, and mine is, how does it affect the children? Every time you make a choice, every time you make a decision, how does it affect the children? And I teach that to the junior staff and to the non-medical staff. If they want to buy something, or if they want, you know, to pay for a service, I'll say, well, first of all, have you considered what that money is a limited resource, and is there something we can use it for that would be better for the children? And so long as you have that, that's a simple focus, but it's very powerful.
So when you close your eyes and you imagine an empowered woman, what do you see?
I think I see somebody who doesn't realize she's empowered, because it's not important, because she is equal. You know, I think it's also about respect. It's not about, you know, grabbing power. And it's not about feeling better than somebody else. It's about understanding that you are equal to everybody else, and everybody else is equal to you. You know, it's about living in a society where there's no surprise that there's a woman prime minister, that there's no surprise that it's a father bringing a child to the hospital. You know, that, you know, we are all individuals, we all have something to give, and we are all equal. And I think it's important, if you are empowered, that what you feel is respect for everybody else, that you're not trying to, you know, force somebody, or, you know, try to, you know, persuade somebody that doesn't want to be persuaded. You know, respect, I think, and the feeling of equality. So it's a non-important issue for you because you have it. Yeah, it's like what you're trying to say is it's something you're just born with. It's not something that is given to you, or that you have to rise up to. It's something that when you're born, you're empowered already, and so you have to sort of. It's like it's an innate part of yourself. I have green eyes. I don't have to fight to have green eyes, you know. So it's the same. But
it's so difficult in a society, I feel, where you know, like, it's for me to come up with a show of empowerment. It's because I feel that a lot of women don't feel empowered, or because they're made not to feel empowered. You know, what do you have to say about that?
I think you're right. And I think the first step is for those of us who feel equal to everybody else, rich or poor, or male or female, that we, because we have that belief that we can show by example, and also teach by communication, you know, the feeling of that belief. People have to understand that they have rights. People have to understand that they are equal. You know, if you're brought up to believe you're not,
right,
then you have to change, you have to break that belief.
Right.
You know?
But I feel it's so difficult because it starts from your parents to like everybody in your life who makes you feel like that, and it's such a challenge to sort of change the norm, especially in any society that has this sort of, women are supposed to be like this and men are supposed to be like this. It's a constant challenge, but I think that women really have to rise up and sort of change that.
And I think as well, just if you treat someone with respect that they don't expect,
right? Yes.
Then if you do it enough times, they start to expect it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And we find that on the ward a lot. Mm-hmm. The mamas, they come to the ward, they may not have any education whatsoever. They're very, very poor. They're from really properly the villages.
Right.
And they come and they don't open their mouths. They're so quiet.
Yeah.
But we talk to them, and I get cross with them when their child has a temperature and they haven't told anybody. And all the other mamas who've been there for a while on the ward, they teach them, no, you must speak up. Yeah. You have rights on this ward,
Yeah.
If your child is sick or your child is hungry or your child is afraid, you must tell the staff, to the point that you find the quietest mama when she arrived. 2 weeks later, you see her teaching the next mama.
Really?
And you really do see that.
Yeah.
And that just makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Because although you're right, it's hard because it's a constant flow of people, but everyone you touch will teach somebody else,
Yeah.
And you just don't know what effect you will have.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So what is your advice or suggestion that you can give women walking the path of empowerment?
I guess it depends on where you are on that path.
Okay.
So for someone like you,
okay.
I think it would be about treating people respectfully.
Yeah.
And showing people that you feel equal.
Right.
Not being afraid of situations.
Right.
And also, if in any way you can encourage people to speak up for themselves, if you can inform them of their rights, anything like that, that just allows them to sort of see a new worldview.
Yeah.
And then for people who are struggling, but understand it, just to believe that you're equal. You have to do that.
Yes.
And in the smaller setting where you're right that they do struggle because the society maybe perhaps that they're living in doesn't believe it, but if they get together as groups rather than as individuals, like on our ward, the mamas certainly run the place there.
Yeah.
And it's because they teach each other.
Yeah.
So,
and that's something I saw, and I was so overwhelmed when I went there. I just saw there were all mothers sitting together, and there was not one father, there was all mothers sitting, and you told me that it took them so much to get to that place because they have to go through so many hurdles to get to, so they've seriously been through their own journey.
It takes a long time to get on the ward in Muhimbili. It takes a long time and a lot of different obstacles you have to overcome. There's a lot of people who must give up before they get to us, or whose children are too sick.
Yeah.
So the ones who make it to us, maybe they don't feel empowered or equal, but I tell you, they are strong women.
Yeah.
They have not given up on their children, So they are, I am constantly impressed, and I'm very privileged. I feel privileged to look after these children and to get to know their mamas. We have a lovely relationship. There's quite a community on the ward. And we do have fathers, and we have brothers, and we have uncles and grandfathers, and they all work together and try and do what's best for all the children collectively.
Okay. Is there any last-minute thoughts or experiences you'd like to share?
I would have to say that I love living in Tanzania.
Okay.
I find, that there are a couple of things, like, for example, religion in Tanzania.
Yeah.
What I love about Tanzania is you could teach the world about religious tolerance.
Yeah.
Tanzanians have very strong beliefs, but they don't have this animosity for other religions that you see in almost every country in the world other than Tanzania.
Yeah.
So, there's a sense of unity in that.
Yeah.
You know, and we see that on the ward with if the Catholic priest comes in, then, you know, Muhammad, 6-year-old Muhammad will go up and get a set of rosary beads.
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
you know, if the imam comes in, then, you know, the little boy who's Christian will go and be blessed by the imam. Do you know what I mean? So
yes, yes.
I really like that. I think that's wonderful. And the patience and the kindness of the people that I look after, you know, they are so poor. Yeah. And yet they never ask you for something that's not appropriate. I've never been approached by a parent, ever, for something, for like a begging type of situation. They are so, they're just wonderful. So, you know, I think our little community does feel empowered, and perhaps that's why. That's why they, you know, they have such, in such terrible circumstances. Like their children, every last one of those children has cancer, and 50% of them will die. Yeah. You know, so these women and the few men that come, they are really a wonderful group of people.
They are, I saw that when I went. And one of the most beautiful things I saw was that even when the children were so sick, they were being children. They just, you know, they were having such a good time, and they, you know, they were just acting like everything was okay, which is so amazing.
That's right. And like the staff as well, you know, we have one of the doctors on the ward is almost like a child whisperer. If we need a child to do something and no one can make the child do it, she can.
Okay.
She can talk to the child, and it's, again, she goes down to the level of the child. She speaks to them quietly. She's, you know, she respects them as a little human being, a little individual, and she talks to them about their fears. And so in that way they feel heard, you know. Yes. So we have so many wonderful people on the ward: doctors, nurses. You know, we have a non-clinical service with teachers and play therapists, and we have a hostel where they can stay. And so, you know, there's a lot of people involved in the care of these children, and all of them are Tanzanians. And they do a wonderful, wonderful job of respecting and loving and caring for these children.
So I was truly inspired. I hope you all were too. Thank you so much, Dr. Trish, for coming. It was seriously very inspiring to hear about everything you do and the lives that you touch. You know, thank you so much for coming.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Bye.